What was the most unexpected thing that happened to you in a supermarket? Some 10 plus years back, I ran into an old school teacher, from 25 years prior. I recognized him, but he didn't know who I was until I told him my name. He was one of the teachers I remembered fondly. He was my teacher for a whole year in primary school, elementary school. His classes were always fun, and he was a kind and gentle man. He never yelled at students, and despite this being the early 80s, he preferred to separate troublemakers, and give them time out in the quiet room, a reading room off the main classroom, as punishment, instead of the cane or simply yell at them like other teachers. The fact his classes were the most functional, with the least trouble, showed he was on the right path there. One thing happened that year that I've never forgotten. My grandfather passed away, and I had to go to school the next day. I was still quite upset, and didn't want to go out into the playground at lunch. All I wanted was a quiet place to sit down and cry for a bit, in private. I asked him if I could sit in the quiet room rather than go outside to have lunch. This messed up his lunch plans. He couldn't leave me unsupervised in the classroom/adjacent room, so he ate his lunch in the classroom instead of the staff room with the other teachers. He came into the quiet room after he'd finished, and I still remember how he put his hand on my back, just touching my shoulder blade firm enough to say, "I'm here for you." It was the most comforting thing any teacher had ever done. Sadly, in this day and age they'd be labeled as a predator, but he was far from that. He genuinely cared about his students, and his support helped me compose myself enough to spend the rest of lunch in the playground. I have never forgotten that. When I saw him in the supermarket, I went up to him and said, "Hey, Mr. G, how are you?" He had that "do I know you?" look that most people get, but with a bit of a twist. It's like he assumed I was an old student from years before, but he had no clue as to my name. So I introduced myself, and a smile spread across his face. He asked what I'd done with my life, and warmly shook my hand, telling me how happy he was that I'd turned out great, adding that he always knew I'd do well. I guess many good teachers have this happen to them over the years, so it would be a fairly common line. We chatted for about 5 minutes, and I decided to tell him how I'd never forgotten what he did, that minute of care, that meant so much to me. He almost had tears in his eyes as I explained how I felt about it. We then spoke about how modern-day rules wouldn't allow a teacher to go near a student, let alone touch them, and how a few bad apples have spoiled it for the opportunities where the right touch can have so much benefit. He thanked me for sharing my memory with him, and how it made his day to learn that such a small action from 25 years ago had been so significant to me that I'd never forgotten it. We both parted with huge smiles.